So in this video, I'm going to share my thoughts on the South African learner driving test model, all right, that is currently in use. And I'm going to share my thoughts on what I think should be the reforms, improvements and changes in the current model, which I think no longer serves us as the driving public in terms of safety, in terms of decreasing rather the carnage on our roads, in terms of general driving behaviors that we see on the roads, in the cities, in the towns, even in the rural areas of South Africa. All right, now I've got some experience in terms of what I'm going to talk about, in terms of my own research, my interest in the subject, also in terms of my own skill and experience over the years, as I have been involved at a professional level, training and coaching the actual drivers at a theoretical level, at a driving level, as well as coaching the actual instructors who actually instructs and teach people how to drive on the road. Now in South Africa, you basically have a test that is regulated. The test requires that the applicant must apply for purposes of being tested. And once they've applied and they've gotten their theoretical learner's license, they then qualify to go into an actual practical driver's test. Now, in the driver's test, I'm going to summarize. In the driver's test, basically what's expected is that on the day of the test, firstly, the applicant must bring their own vehicle, and that vehicle must be on the road, it must be fit, and must have a certificate of roadworthiness. Basically, it must be a vehicle that is fit and proper to be, or rather authorized to be, on the South African roads. Now, also that the applicant, him or herself, must also be with someone who is, I would say, the coach or the instructor, obviously because they cannot drive on their own on the South African roads, even though they have a theoretical learner's license, but even on the day of the test, they still need to be accompanied by someone who oversees them as they are driving, all right, to the actual testing center. Now, the test itself has two components. There is a 20-minute component, which is basically called a yard test. In the yard test, basically what is tested is the knowledge of the applicant in terms of the pre-trip inspection. Now, once the pre-trip inspection test is done, then the examiner who will be examining, or rather who would be examining the applicant on the day of the test, will then proceed with the applicant driving, proceed to the yard. The yard has 4 basic sections of 5 minutes each. There is the incline start, where the applicant must show the skill or the maneuver that they are capable of starting the car and moving off with that car on an incline or steep incline without rolling back. And should they roll, they most likely will fail the test almost immediately. All right. Secondly, they have to go to the second part of the maneuver, which is called a turn on the road, or a 3-point turn, where you use 3 maneuvers to turn the car around on a narrow road within 12 meters, right? And then once you're done with that, you as an applicant, you then expected to move on now to the third maneuver, which is parallel parking, where you show that you've got the skill to reverse park using parallel parking on both sides, the left and using the right side. And then the last one usually is the early docking. I know some people call it the alley docking. It's the early docking where basically you're reversing into an alley using the right hand side, and you also reverse using the left hand side. Now, once the yard test is finished successfully by the applicant, then there's a 40 minutes of the actual road driving, right? The actual road driving takes place on an actual road, and 65% of that part of the driving must actually be on a city road with some robots, and a two-way road or a road with 2 lanes, and so on and so forth. Now, having said all this, right, it's almost every year that we hear of traffic officials being arrested because they're involved in collusion and bribery and corruption. This is because the current system is built in such a way that you can only be passed and given a driver's license by an individual, meaning a human being, all right? And therefore it opens up, of course, not all human beings are like that. Not all traffic officers or examiners are corrupt like that, but it does open up the possibility for corruption. All right. Now, my proposal, therefore, is that we also need to look at the model itself, right? The model itself, for me, is problematic. Now, when we talk about a skill, in this case, a skill of driving, I need to remind you that a skill is learned over time. Your mind learns a skill over time with the movement of your limbs, with your dexterity, and what I would call hand-eye movement, hand-eye coordination, limb-eye coordination, and so on. So it takes time. 21 days, some psychological schools of thought suggest that you need 21 days to gain a new skill. Some suggest 30 days, right? And some even suggest 66 days to actually learn a new skill. Now, I am not convinced that a 20 minutes yard test as well as a 40 minutes road test actually gives us sufficient evidence. Now, hear me and hear me well. I'm saying it does not give us sufficient evidence that actually a person can drive. Now, to add salt into injury, most driving tests do not include an emergency stop, which, by the way, is required in terms of what is gazetted, or rather what is stipulated in South Africa as a requirement for a learner driver's test. So I'm saying that it is not included. Secondly, you will never, in South Africa, you will almost never see a driving school actually teaching a person how to drive on the freeway, right? Now, here's the best one for me. Here's the best one. Every driving school I know, well, almost every driving school I know, will cancel the lessons once it starts raining, because they will never teach you how to drive in the rain. It's almost counterintuitive that you are in a driving school and it starts to rain, and you can be sure the learners, the road lessons rather, will be cancelled. And then the last one, I've never seen a driving school anywhere in my experience out there. I've never seen a driving school that will teach you how to drive in the dark or how to drive at night. Now, I'm saying, therefore, that one of the reforms